Hi, this is Dr. Daniels, and welcome to Healing with Dr. Daniels. And this is the Sunday, April 5th show, 2020. It has a nice ring to it, 2020. There used to be a news show called 2020. I don't know if it's still around. I think the implication was they told the truth about something. All right. Well, today's topic is FDA recall, day late, dollar short, and relevance to your immune strengthening program, which is, I think, where our focus should be. However, first, yay, we're going to take our turpentine. Dum-dum-dum. We have here a spoon, important, and we have white sugar. Yes, very important. White sugar. I even labeled it sugar. Yeah. I've upgraded my labeling practices. Yes. Now we have to get a turpentine. I have a little squeeze thing here. I took my turpentine bottle and I labeled it turpentine. Ran out of space there, but what the heck. People can get the idea that it's not rubbing alcohol. All right, here we go. Got our little pipette here. Squeeze it really tight. Dip it in the bottle. And whoa. Got all the way up to the neck of the dropper. I don't know if you can see that with the neck of the dropper. Yeah. So that it's just right there at the neck. We have our sugar. Bam. So I take half a teaspoon a day on days I get around to it. It usually turns out to be 2 to 4 times a week, actually. All right, and we have agua, water. Down the hatch, spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. If you want to know more about turpentine, you can go to vitalitycapsules.com and get your free copy of the Candida Cleaning Report, and it tells you all about the historic uses of turpentine and how your grandmother probably used it to heal everything. I get emails every day from people who say that they ask the oldest person in their family who's still alive, and that person said, "Oh yeah, we use turpentine for everything." All right, turpentine sugar. Now, as many of you know, I am a fan of distilled water, purified water. Why challenge the immune system with all the impurities in tap water? Like, you're asking for trouble. So I drink purified water. So that means I am especially meticulous about taking my trace minerals. Now, even if you don't drink distilled water, you should be taking trace minerals. This is Shilajit. It just happens to be the most potent trace mineral source in the world. And it is made in Russia, and you can see the name. Oh, there we go. Mumio. Mymueoro. They're not fussy about spelling like we are in the United States. In fact, I don't even think they have spelling classes. So, Mumio is the name. And here it is. Looks like black tar. It is tough. And so I've worked with it a little bit with this spoon before the show to get together a small little speck. And there is my small little speck on the spoon. You can see a very small amount, more or less 200 milligrams for those of you who have a milligram measuring scale. And take it, put it in here. As you can see, it does not readily dissolve. Yes. So we're just going to sit it right here, and we're going to get back to it later. If I don't get back to it during the show, you can be confident I will be drinking it after. All right. That's our turpentine. We got our Shilajit. Next is a Vitality Capsules update. Yay! So we have located our difficult to find ingredient. Yay! And our manufacturer has given us a May 1st production date. So our ship date, cross our fingers, May 15th, or hopefully sooner. So we are working on that on the case. And so many of you know we've instituted rigorous testing of every single ingredient. And we have added a step, which is we now have dedicated tasters who taste the samples from different suppliers to make sure it tastes the way it's supposed to taste for that ingredient. And I'm telling you, the results were absolutely shocking. Things that were not supposed to dissolved in water. Things that were supposed to remain granular, gelled up. Things that were supposed to be brown were green. And you're like, wow. And so this is actually, while it did add an extra step to the testing process, it means now we don't have to send certain samples to the lab because we know it's not the real stuff anyway. So that has been a very exciting revelation. And so I will be sending emails to those of you who've made purchases and updating you on our progress with that. And of course, the next update, which everyone's been waiting for, is the COVID-19 watch. We're going to talk about this, and then we're going to get to the FDA drug recall, which actually is quite relevant to your ambitions to stay healthy. Okay. So, one thing I like to do is stick to official sources that are approved of, by the powers that be. So we don't want to, go checking into any alternative stuff or any source that the CDC might disagree with, because hey, what the heck? Why not just use the CDC as a source? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, what are people dying of? There's a question. And are people dying of COVID? And is COVID spreading? And when is it going to go away? And so all of these things are things that no one can tell for sure, but there are clues. So, first clue. First of all, I'd like to give you a little bit of background on viruses that was taught in medical school. Okay, so this is like the medical school teaching. So a virus is DNA or RNA in an envelope. We'll call it a cell membrane. That's it. That's the whole ball of wax. What does that mean? That means it doesn't have the internal equipment to reproduce. So if you deposit a virus on a surface, that virus cannot sit there and reproduce and have babies and babies and babies and make 10,000 copies. It just can't happen. You deposit one copy on that surface, that's it. That's all you get, one copy. So what this means is the infectivity of viruses is severely limited. So viruses cannot reproduce. Just by definition, they cannot reproduce outside of the human body. This is what was taught in medical school. All right. The next thing about viruses, they are not motile. No such thing as a virus that's motile. What does that mean? That means a virus can't move. It hasn't got legs, hasn't got a flagella, hasn't got wings, can't swim, no fins. It cannot move. So once a virus is deposited someplace, and that's it. That's where it stays. It's not like a worm that moves around. Viruses, boom. So they can't move and they cannot reproduce. Okay, so that's what we're taught about viruses. A year earlier in medical school, we're taught about the infectious theory of disease, that you get something, you're infected with it, and it causes illness. And then we're taught about antibiotics and how we can tell if they work and how we can tell if you're infected. Okay. So how do you know an organism is alive? This is a question, of course, I wondered. And they were very generous in answering it at school. Anything that cannot reproduce is not alive. They didn't put it together and tell us that viruses are dead and they're not alive. They just said, definition of life, can reproduce. Even better, it can move and or reproduce. When I say move, I mean move under its own volition, under its own power. So viruses do not have an internal energy production system. They do not have a system of reproduction. All right. So you can decide for yourself if all this stuff on the internet about viruses being dead and not being able to infect anybody is true or false. I'm not going to draw any conclusions there. Leave that to you. Now, so we know for a fact, though, there is total agreement that viruses cannot reproduce outside the human body, number one. And number two, they cannot move. They don't have the ability to move. Just can't, not possible. That's why someone has to sneeze in order to spread it. because you actually using that person's energy and breath and that person's moisture to propel the virus. All right. So what this means then is if someone touches a surface with their finger and deposits a virus, maybe it's COVID, maybe it's not, but a virus, that virus can't spread throughout the whole surface like we're seeing in graphic simulated representations online. Just saying. All right, so now, the other quality of an infestation or disease-causing agent is it must be present in the infected person in numbers large enough so they can be easily identified and isolated. So this is not the case for any viruses, by the way. And this is why we have PCR. That's the amplification technology for detecting them, because you can't find them. And healthy people exposed to a sick person must get infected. So this is not the case with COVID. We have many cases now emerging where you have a couple, they are married, they are living in the same space, sleeping together. One person gets a cough, tests positive for COVID, and the other one is just does not test. Let's just say they don't test positive for COVID. Whether they get a cough or not, irrelevant. The question is, do they get COVID? And the answer is apparently not. So the question is, what's going on with the epidemic? What's our progress here? Okay. In a particular year, there's a large number of deaths from heart disease. So I took these deaths, multiplied them by 4, which is how many people have died from heart disease since January 1st. That would be 161,000 deaths from heart disease in the 3 months ending March 31st. There have been 9,500 from car accidents. And in 2018, from the flu, during the same period, 8,500. All right. You can find these numbers anywhere online. Just look up top 10 causes of death. You'll see the causes from heart disease and divide it by 4. Bam, 161,000. Right? This is like simple math. Now, car accidents have killed 9,500 people in the same time. Now, with the in the same time in 2018. With the isolation procedures and people not being permitted to drive their cars, we can expect deaths from car accidents to really go down. Now, again, in COVID, the same period of time, deaths from COVID, 4,300. So deaths from car accidents, deaths from last year's flu, deaths from heart disease, way, way in excess of that. Now, we have a lot of really amazing graphics online, and I think it's important to access the more accurate ones. So what's an accurate graphic? An accurate graphic is a graphic that talks about what has actually happened, not a projection about the future, because we are not fortune tellers, we're human, and we don't know the future. And if you want any evidence that humans don't know the future, let's take a look at the flu season projections. So on February 10th, 2018, Fortune magazine reported that flu deaths will be 4,000 deaths a week. That's 208,000 deaths in a year, right? It's a lot of deaths. But how many people actually died from the flu in 2018? 34,000. So off by easily a factor of 6 to 7. So we know we can't count on projections. They're generally inaccurate. And if Fortune magazine, a reputable magazine, is any indication, they're way inflated. And so the lower number, well, okay, so let's take a look. At the other thing about COVID. So COVID is supposedly affecting older people. That would be me. People over 60, older people, they're more likely to die from COVID. And I love these COVID graphics about people like me dropping dead. I mean, if you take this stuff to heart, you can really get yourself worked up, I think. So if we go to the Intelligencer, which is a branch of the New Yorker, they have been following this. They are way cool. So what they have done for us, if they have taken the deaths from COVID and very nicely broken it down by age. Let's see. I'll tell you, where are your graphics when you want them? So there's these people in the United States over 85, and they're really getting hammered. They are dying from COVID at a rate of 10.5%. I said, holy cow, that's a lot. That's 10.5%. That's a higher rate of dropping dead than other people, right, who are getting exposed to, or if you want to say, infected with COVID. And that is true. But the other question to ask, I mean, if you want a baseline comparison, right, we all want a control group, is what are the chances of someone who's 85 plus years old dying in the next year anyway? Right? But that's really what you want to know. Well, for that, there's these people who make a living, money, lots of money, by predicting things. These are called actuaries. Actuaries. So actuaries are people who, using past data, calculate the present immediate probability of things happening. So other people, insurance companies, can make bets on these probabilities made by the actuaries. And so these actuaries, they spend all day, all night, all year gathering data. Okay. So COVID-19 death rates by year, here it is. It's Business Insider. And so if we look at the 80 plus population, their death rate from COVID is 14.8%. And diseases death rate is highest among the elderly. Okay, but what we really want to know is, what do the actuaries say? What is the actuarial probability of death for someone who's over 80? And what I found was pretty darn shocking. So we go to the actuarial tables, and I use the ssa.gov/OACT/stats, blah, blah, blah. So all you have to do is look up actuarial tables. Okay. So a person's chances of dying once they're over 80, median chance of dying is 14.7%. So let's, and if they have COVID, their chances of dying, 14.8%. So let me take a look at that. Recheck my numbers here. Boo, 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 boo. Okay, we gotta get all the way down here. Okay, our other document. Yeah, so your chance of dying if you're over 85 is 14.7%. Just your annual chance of dying. And that's your chance of dying because you're alive. Yes, yeah. And you have to come to grips with the fact that 1, you're human, 2, you are alive, and 3, you're going to die. So when you look at an infestation, what you really want to know is, does it increase your chances of dying? That's the real question. Over had you not had it. So 14 0.8% chance of death compared to a 14.7 chance of death is not a difference. In other words, a person's chances of dying are really about the same. If they're elderly, whether they have COVID or whether they do not have COVID. So this is important to know. So then, yes, of course, a person who's 85 and has COVID, tests positive for COVID, has a greater chance of dying than a person who's 60 and tests positive for COVID. But that's not the comparison. The comparison is, does a person who's elderly of a certain age with COVID have a greater chance of dying than a person the same age without COVID? That's the question. And that's the comparison that would be made. And a lot of times when you're getting information, when someone is analyzing it in a really biased way, let's say, they just pick a comparison that's going to create the impression they want to create. Now, this really hit home with me because my brother, I'm 63, which makes him 64. Well, no, he's not going to be 64 for a few weeks here. So he's 63. We're both 63. And he has diabetes. He has hypertension. He takes all the drugs the doctors tell him to take. And so he was talking to me on the phone. He said, well, you know, Jennifer, I'm in an increased risk group, so I'm not going to be traveling. And this was a while ago, before the ban on travel showed up. So, you know, he's like really into this. And what he doesn't realize is his risk from being diabetic, being hypertensive, is what is the real threat to his life, not testing positive for COVID. All right, so the age thing, I hope you understand that and that you can just like dismiss that. Now, another thing that we have here is this graph, death by age, was done on March 20th. Well, in the COVID epidemic, that's like seriously old news, right? I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Where's the update graph? There isn't one. Why wouldn't there be an update graph? There probably isn't an update graph because someone else noticed the same thing I noticed, which is, oops, the graph does not support the contention that being positive for COVID increases your chances of death. That was a problem. So there's not an update of the graph of COVID death rate versus age, and you can expect that there will not be one. Just not going to happen. All right, what else do we need to take a look at? Another question is, well, how long will the epidemic last? Well, first of all, what are the projections and how can we interpret those projections? And this is from a financial report site online. And this person actually graphs the projections, the data we've been given, and what actually happened. Okay, so the below model was considered by many to be the standard. 6 days ago, it projected that in New York, there would be 50,000 hospitalizations by April 1st. See the graphic below. 50,000 was the projection. Actual, 10,000. Oh, I'm sorry, 12,000. Instead, there are 12,000. It was off by a factor of 4 in only 6 days. I can understand a bunch of PhDs being off by 20% in 6 days. This is what the financial site says. But there are 1/4 the number of hospitalizations they projected. What went wrong? I hope what went wrong is a question a lot of people will ask when this is over. Most of all, what went wrong with almost every single model that predicted exponential growth and millions of deaths by now, the Imperial College, Harvard University, University of Washington, New York Times, and on, the answer is straightforward. They all assumed exponential growth. They used 6th grade math to make predictions rather than take into account that this virus, like every virus in the world history, does not have exponential growth. And as I mentioned before, what they taught us in medical school, since the virus cannot physically move and it does not contain within it the ability to reproduce, you can't have exponential growth. Not possible. Because each virus does not have the ability to reproduce in place quickly on site. Not possible. Not the way viruses work. And so the question, of course, what are the boundaries to the virus? And he has his theories what the boundaries are, but the boundaries are very much just what I said, biochemical. He says population, demographics, immune populations, the amount of exposure different groups have to the virus, possible mutations, whether it affects, we don't really know. Again, he says, we don't really know. He doesn't know. But again, if you know the basic virology theory, you got an organism that cannot reproduce and cannot move. It is not capable of exponential growth. Now, bacteria, on the other hand, they can reproduce in place. They are capable of exponential growth, bacteria. However, bacteria very quickly outgrow their food supply and die. So they have exponential growth, but it's like a flash and then gone. So the only way for sustained growth is to have a reservoir. I cover this in my Ebola talk. A reservoir, which is a non-human place where the infectious agent can reside and multiply, but where humans can regularly come into contact to replenish their contact with the infectious agent. If that's the case, you can have exponential growth, tell you that right now. So with COVID, there is no such situation. So it's not bucket of COVID over there, get your COVID over there. Don't have that. That's not what's happening. Like with Legionnaire's disease, these guys were in a hotel. The infectious agent was pumped through the ductwork and flooded over everybody, and poor guys died. They were elderly, but the contact with this infectious agent, it just finished them off. All Legionnaire guys died. So you would need that level of mass exposure continually. So what happened with Legionnaires is they all dropped dead. They shut the hotel down. And so that was the end of Legionnaire's outbreak. But to have a sustained outbreak with exponential growth, you need a common source that new people are exposed to in large numbers. And then that particular agent they're exposed to needs to, once it gets in the body, have the ability to reproduce. This is not the case with the present virus we're considering. And we can see by the growth, this guy's a financial numbers guy, and he says, there's one paper I found that takes all this into account. It looks at each country and even each state where the virus hit. It looks at how many times the virus doubled and then how long it took for the second derivative to go negative. Now, it's how long it took for the acceleration of the virus growth to start going down, and then how long it took for the virus to get under control. In other words, the number of cases or deaths start going down to the point where they quickly become negligible. And the paper is by Gerard Tellis of USC, and it's titled, How Long Should Social Distancing Last? And so this is very nice. He has an excellent graph here. And what he says is it takes 2 weeks to moderate and 31 days to go away. So in China, things started on December 23rd. They first took action on January 23rd, and on February 8th, hey, all clear. We can look at Italy. Italy, March 6th, took 17 days to peak and go down, and that's where we are now, 23rd of March. And so it takes about 14 days to get under control, and about 21 days where things will clear. So if you look at the United States, then let's take a look at the state of Washington. We have pending results, but we are expecting things to go away somewhere around April 1st. And April 1st to 7th is, for the United States, pretty much where we expect things to kind of mysteriously decline and evaporate. And so he says the curve in every location basically remains the same. So based on prior curves And based on the data so far and locations that are still pending, they can extrapolate and figure out roughly when a location will hit its peak and when the virus cases will start going down quickly. So in Spain, for as an instance, the peak forecast 2 days ago. Yeah. And we can see even in, let's see, what country is this? It's in Spain. So in Spain, actually the deaths are going down. There you go. How long social distancing will continue? Don't know, can't say. However, that brings us to today's topic, which is FDA recall. Now, the FDA, this may be a shock to you, but they actually don't recall anything. They just suggest recalls. So the FDA calls for market removal of ranitidine. Those of you who haven't heard that, you probably heard the more popular name. The brand name is Zantac. This is an H2 blocker for antacid. That's indigestion, heartburn. Those of you who watched TV in the 70s, there's this famous commercial about Ralph. And Ralph says, "Oh, my stomach hurts. I can't believe I ate the whole thing." And his helpful wife says, "You did, Ralph. You ate the whole thing, Ralph." And of course, then Ralph takes an antacid and he feels better. But now, so the H2 blockers are the class of drugs that replaced antacids. And so just like Ralph, people can eat stuff that makes them sick and not suffer too much. Okay, so here's what the FDA is saying, and then we can look at the evidence and see what's really going on here. So the FDA calls for market removal of ranitidine or Zantac. And so I'm like, oh my God, did they find out that it's dangerous, that removing the stomach acid is actually compromising people and making them sick? Fat chance. Nope. A problem, okay? That's a firm statement, a problem with probable. That means, we're not sure. Human carcinogen. N-nitrosodimethylamine, NDMA, contamination in Zantac, commonly known by Zantac, has led the FDA to call for manufacturers of the drug to remove all product, both over-the-counter and prescription forms, from the market. Now, they're doing this based on probable contamination? Like, we don't have real contamination, we have probable contamination? Okay, so let's go a little further. So that's the first red flag, all right? Like, where's the science? The contamination does not stem from manufacturing concern. In other words, hey, it's not the drug company's fault. No. But rather, the levels have been found to increase over time depending on how it's stored. So why can't you just continue to produce it, but put a sensor in the bottle that detects the moisture and temperature of storage, and if the temperature gets above a certain amount, the strip changes color, and it's probably not safe to use. This technology does exist, just by the way. Okay. In particular, FDA found through product testing that the impurity developed over time when the ranitidine was stored above room temperature. So I live in a swamp, right? Like, what is room temperature? Room temperature around here is 100 degrees. So I don't know what room temperature is. I'm sure they're talking about something a little less than 100 degrees. It would be nice if they listed the temperature here. All right. But again, we're vague. Testing has also shown that the older a ranitidine product is, or the longer the length of time since it was manufactured, the greater the level of NDMA. FDA said in a statement announcing the call for product withdrawal. So again, that can be handled by just an expiration date, right? Figure out, is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 5 years? What is it? And that's your expiration date. So expiration date on the bottle, selected based on impurity testing, and a temperature strip that would solve the problem. But no, they're calling for a product withdrawal. In addition to product being removed from the market, FDA is asking consumers to throw away any Zantac products they may have. There are still questions about how the impurity is formed. They don't know. Over time during storage, said the director of the FDA. For example, what impact does the drug packaging have on the development or the specific formulation have on the development of NDMA? We don't know. We're just recommending a recall. Okay. But I've been through this before, so I can give you a little help at the end of this article. So Dr. So-and-so stressed that the products at the point of manufacture do not have unacceptable levels of this cancer-causing agent. This is a market withdrawal. It is not a recall because technically the products are okay. They meet all their specs, he said. It's only when they are subjected generally to heat stress do they manifest higher levels of this cancer agent. Clearly, we cannot have products in the market if they are stored under conditions consumers might store them under that they would become unacceptable. Dr. Woodcock said FDA is not withdrawing approvals for the products, but manufacturers would need to show the product remains stable under normal storage conditions. All right. What's going on here? So once upon a time, oh my God, 35 years ago, holy cow, 10, 20, 30, 35 years ago. So 35 years ago, it was found that polio vaccine was the cause of modern day polio. That's it. No vaccine, you didn't get polio. I said, oh my God, they need to stop the vaccination for polio. They need to recall the vaccine. They did not recall the vaccine or even suggest it stop being used until the 1990s or sometime in 2000. Why? Because at that point, the company had introduced another polio vaccine that it could replace. So the FDA was not going to issue a recall if it was going to reduce sales. So I said to myself, when I saw this pretty flimsy recall, right, that I wonder if the company has another product in the same therapeutic category and they could just simply easily redirect their marketing to the other product in the same category that is effective, or they say is effective, against indigestion and ulcers. So, being a doctor, I knew that Zantac is an H2 blocker. That's a therapeutic category. I didn't need to know any details about it, but therapeutic category. The next therapeutic category, which is much more lucrative, is proton pump inhibitors. So the question is, who makes Zantac, and does that same company also make a proton pump inhibitor? Now, we don't need to name companies. I'm not trying to, blackball anybody. But I'm just saying this is the way the FDA operates. They will not do a recall unless they first check with the company to make sure that there will not be a negative economic impact. And sure enough, same company makes Prevacid, another a proton pump inhibitor, which is the next level of drug. So let's take a look. Question. How much does a month of Zantac cost? Answer. Between $24 and $60 a month. But whoa, what about Prevacid? If you just Google it, it's $443 a month. That's like, wow, there's a big price difference. So what company that makes the $443 a month drug and the $24 a month drug would want patients, or doctors for that matter, to prescribe the less expensive drug? You wouldn't. So you want to just take it off the market. But who wants to be a bad guy? Who wants to be a bad guy and say, well, we make this really expensive drug, and we don't want the sales cannibalized by this very inexpensive drug. So we're going to take this inexpensive drug and just take it off the market. Just boom, bam, gone. No. Have the FDA come in and say, well, we think that there may be a contaminant. We're not sure there is, and the company has not made any mistakes, but we're just going to suggest a recall. And so now the company gets to pass the buck. And so the Prevacid, the proton pump inhibitor that sells for $443 a month, that's if you go to your local pharmacist for it, is the other drug the same company makes. But wait, if you're bold enough to go online, this same $443 a month drug can be purchased for as little as $100 a month. But that's still better than $24 a month. So, how safe are proton pump inhibitors? And should they even be in the market? Well, whether you're a COVID believer or a COVID denier, this is something you might be interested in. Prevacid has been the proton pump inhibitor category. Let's be clear. This is a category of drugs that raises the pH of the stomach. So now parasites that naturally come in to the stomach are not neutralized by the stomach acid because it's not there. And so they did research on proton pump inhibitors, and sure enough, they found that proton pump inhibitors increase pneumonia/pneumonia death by 30%. Whoa. We have something going on here. Respiratory illness. It's deadly, so they say. We're going to take the word for it. Let's believe it. Then obviously taking a proton pump inhibitor is going to increase your chances of death. Well, let's say tremendously. But we don't see any call to people to increase the strength of their immune system by stopping their proton pump inhibitors. So if you have asthma, that it worsens asthma, they've done those studies. It worsens pneumonia, and just in case you had any use for your kidneys, proton pump inhibitors can lead to kidney failure, cancer, and just decrease immune system function overall and increase susceptibility to infection. Now, we are led to believe that older people are more susceptible to death from respiratory, as my uncles would say, whatchamacallit. Respiratory whatchamacallit. Than others, but let's take a look. I tell you, you go online and get graphs of every kind of thing. Appetite for numbers. Just really, really great. So they have death by age, but whoa. If you look at coronavirus death risk and excess risk, people with pre-existing health conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and high blood pressure. This is what's really killing people. Heart disease, diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, high blood pressure, and cancer. If you look at the overall death rate from COVID, it's 0.9%. Anybody know what the overall death rate is in the United States? Average, across-the-board death rate in the United States, just because you're breathing today, is a 0.9% chance you will be dead in 1 year. No matter what you do, 0.9% of you listening to this show are going to be dead. You're going to be dead 12 months from now. Just count on it. 0.9%. That's 9 per 1,000. But wait. If you have cancer, your COVID death rate is 5.6%. I would hazard a guess that if you have cancer, your death rate is probably 5.6% per year or even higher. And same with high blood pressure, same with emphysema, diabetes, and heart disease. So it turns out that whether you have COVID or whether you don't have COVID does not increase your chances of death in any particular category. Your chance of death with or without COVID is the same, but your chance of death if you're in that category is higher because you're in that category. There's no causal effect between COVID and the death, and there's not even an association. So in other words, if, let's say, cancer deaths were 5.6% in a COVID negative person, but 10% in a COVID positive person, at that point, we've only proved association, not cause and effect. So what I'm saying is the data is so weak, it doesn't even prove the association of being COVID positive with increased risk of death from any cause. Just saying. I don't say any cause or all cause. That's the difference. It's a nuance, but it's a difference. So your all cause mortality at the end of the year is the same whether you have COVID or whether you don't have COVID. Your all cause mortality is going to differ either if you have diabetes or if you have heart disease or if you have chronic respiratory disease. But within that category, your probability of death is not in any way increased or enhanced because you have evidence. I won't say evidence, a positive COVID test. Let's be scientific. So now what's happening, again, if you go on the internet and people are saying, oh my God, I had COVID. And this is your regular everyday person in the street. And you watch the video. I've watched a few of them. I'm going to stop because I need to just move on. They confess that they were not tested, that they called their doctor who told them that if they had a cold, it was probably COVID and to self-quarantine, blah, blah, blah. It's like, whoa, you don't even know what you had. You're not even COVID positive. So we need to realize that there's not even a positive COVID test in many of these people. And we know from the test data that 80% of the positive COVID tests, there actually is no COVID, no genetic material classified as COVID that's present. So we're basically have a disease that's being spread in large part by rumor. If you say you have it, you have it. If you think you have it, you have it. Again, another case of the Easter Bunny. Yes. All right, that takes us to questions. Yay, let's take a look at questions. We're waiting for it. Okay. Okay, so this person says, I'm interested in knowing about any natural therapies and advice for a friend that has recently been diagnosed with stage 4 sarcoma cancer. She is 36 and wanting to do something natural. So the first thing she needs to do is investigate her particular sarcoma cancer and investigate her particular probability of dying from it. And if her chances of dying from her cancer at the end of the year is less than 1%, then basically she has been given a label of being healthy and she should simply go on with her life. So the first thing, whenever you receive a cancer diagnosis, is to look at the survival rate for your particular cancer on an annual basis. Like, what is it, year by year? And beyond that, she could schedule an appointment. We could sort the whole thing out in terms of her diet and other risk factors and how to modify them. But that's the first thing to do. And many people skip that step. JC says, how can I fully restore my endocrine system? So to fight fatigue over several years, I overdid my dark chocolate, theobromine, as a stimulant, but eventually got weird side effects like fatigue and overly strong detoxing that put me into diabetic ketoacidosis. So of course the question is this person diabetic? We don't know. We can just guess. So they were worried about the insulin system, the adrenal system, and thyroid. So the key thing here is persons had fatigue for several years. So fatigue for several years is really just, it can only be like 3 things. 1, not enough water. So increase your water intake. 2, not enough detoxing. Let's just say not enough bowel movements. So if you're getting 3 bowel movements a day, you're really good. Don't go over that. So she says strong detoxing. So let's just guess that she's already got the bowel movements under control, and maybe she's even hydrated. So the third reason for fatigue is malnutrition. So this person is severely malnourished. So stimulants like theobromine, basically caffeine, they deplete the adrenal glands. They get the adrenal glands to release more energy-producing adrenal hormones than what the body thinks is prudent or advisable. And so she needs to increase her adrenal support. And the adrenals then feed the thyroid and the other hormone systems, even the insulin system. So many people, let's say this person is diabetic, find that their diabetes control vastly improves once they restore their adrenals. So I would start there. How do you do that? The simplest, easiest way, assuming this person lives in the United States. So what's most available in the United States would be chicken liver. And again, salt, pepper, liver, onions. That's the recipe. However, you cannot eat liver by itself. You have to eat it with carbs. You have to eat it with a cooked vegetable and with a raw vegetable. So it's a whole dish. And if you look at the plate, no more than 1/3 of it should be liver. The rest needs to be the rice and cooked vegetables. Then you can have the salad on the side. I heard a man testify today that he contracted COVID-19 3 weeks ago. Okay, so let's be clear. You have never met this person. He testified. It means he said something in front of, I don't know, some official people. Maybe it was a court or something, or some government committee. So you really don't know much. But let's just say he does have COVID-19, and he's had it for 3 weeks. So we're going to guess, given the benefit of the doubt, that he actually had a test, and the test was positive for COVID-19. The chance that there is actually any COVID DNA in his system is 20%. Just saying. But let's, again, give him the benefit of the doubt that he's one of those lucky or unlucky few who actually has COVID-19 in his system. All right. His wife has not been affected. So if his wife has not been affected, there's a couple of things going on here. One, he's got a bad marriage. They're just not getting that close. That's possible. Number two, what he has is not contagious. You can't get it by casual or even close contact. So that's what you have to first understand. So I think it's something else. So cough and nasal congestion. Yes, I think it's the heating system in his house. It's winter up there. So put a pan of water near the heating system to humidify the air. And drink more water. It sounds like that's pretty much the extent of what he has. Diana says, good day, Dr. Daniels. With tremendous gratitude, I thank you for your plethora of knowledge that you share. Can you tell me what causes LP and how it can be treated? Okay, so I am 63 years old, so LP is a long playing record. That's what that is. And it can be treated by not buying a turntable. Just that's the end of that one. What is the best thing to do for gallbladder health? I take Vitality capsules and drink distilled water. You're pretty much doing it, really. Stay hydrated and have more bowel movements. When you have bowel movements, that decompresses the gallbladder system and decongest it so that the bile can flow. So that's pretty much it. I had one gallbladder attack and did not want to have one again. I used castor oil packs and went to a bland diet. Continue using your castor oil packs to dissolve the crud, the sludge, and the junk in your gallbladder area. So I would continue the castor oil packs over your gallbladder area and your liver area. You've had a gallbladder attack, so you know exactly where your gallbladder is. Yeah, put the castor oil pack there. And what's going to happen is it's going to dissolve the sludge and empty out your gallbladder. There's certain foods that can help move the bile out without enemas. I don't think I would resort to enemas. I would work with the bowel movements, honestly. Hello, I have a quick question. Does turpentine prevent COVID-19 or coronavirus? Again, so coronavirus, as it is now presented to the public, is imaginary. There's actually no evidence that it A, exists, or B, causes any illness. So that's the first thing to understand. So in general, does turpentine improve the immune system? Absolutely. Hi, Dr. Daniels. My dad presses on his right upper abdomen, and it's a bubble-like thing. He's not sure what it could be. A bubble-like thing can only be one thing. It's gas in the intestines. It's the only place where there's air. Where A, there's air, and B, you're even calm enough to type into the computer your question. Because if the air was anything else, any place else besides in the intestines, the pain would be out of this world, unbearable. So if you have a bubble that's there when you press and seems to move around, then it is your intestines. And you need to have more bowel movements, and that's pretty much the size of it. If you had a hernia in the upper right abdomen, that hernia does not move around, unlike the hernia in the bottom. Alrighty, let's go. Dr. Daniels, I love your work. So grateful for everything I've learned from you. Very curious. What do you think about the view of, we'll just say, Mr. Van der Plant? So Mr. Van der Plant is a natural healer. He died, jumped from a balcony, fell from a balcony, was pushed from a balcony by a jealous girlfriend, whatever. Anyway, he died. He's dead, deceased. And he was a proponent of raw food, especially raw meats. All right. So I am totally not in favor of raw meats. Why am I not in favor of raw meats? Raw meats, like turpentine, were ingested historically in a cultural context. Basically only two ways. One, kill the animal on the spot and ate it while it was still warm. That's one way of eating raw meat. For most of us, that particular method is not available. The next way of eating raw meats, again, these are in cultures that have eaten them historically, is they slice the raw meat super, super thin and soak it in some type of anti-parasite agent, let's say vinegar, which kills the parasites, or they'll soak it in milk, which draws the parasites out, rinse it off, and then eat it. So what I don't agree with Mr. Van der Planets is he advocates just eating raw meat, totally outside of the historical context. If that makes any sense to you. Okay, so this theory, so Van der Planets believes parasites are actually beneficial, and that's true. That's absolutely true. So here's the deal. As human beings, we have this very small brain. And so some parasites we call good bacteria, other parasites we call bad bacteria, and other parasites we call, well, parasites. So because people, for marketing purposes, you don't want to put them all in the same category and say that an organism in your body at one point can be beneficial, at another point can be harmful. No. That's not something people are ready to appreciate, because then that's complicated, right? Because now you have to say, well, when is it helpful and when is it harmful? And most people are not ready for that conversation. Or you get back to the whole Chinese proverb, everything in moderation. Anything in moderation is not a problem. Things are only a problem when they're out of moderation. Then you have the whole judgment thing. Well, what's moderation? So in the case of parasites or living organisms in our body, the simple thing I communicate is, if you drink enough water and have enough bowel movements, then your body will find that balance. It will find that moderation between your happiness, your health, and the living organisms that are in your body. But to say blanket, oh, this one's good all the time. Oh, that one's bad all the time. That is not the way things really work. Okay. Yep. Okay. All right, let's see. Let's see. We'll find questions. Okay, Dr. Dance, how do I get rid of small spots that have not changed in size on my eyelids, which I think must be warts, and one larger one on my left lower eyelash line that has got a bit bigger? I got them from someone that had them in the same place on their eyelids. Unfortunately, at the time, I was ignorant to them spreading this to me from sharing stuff with them that they had not properly cleaned. Somebody I spoke to said it's parasites. I would start gently and just simply put castor oil on your eyelids and your eyes at night. Just flood that area. And I would do that. I would be patient. I would do that for about at least a month. Usually what happens with that is they will actually just fall off your eyelids. Now, at the same time, you need to poop 3 times a day. And you can check out Vitality Capsules at vitalitycapsules.com to give yourself a little bit of help with that. Okay, that brings us to the end of today's show. I hope that you will find inspiration and encouragement to know that it's still a wonderful world. You're healthier than you think, and it's all going to turn out fine. All right, we'll see you next week. Until then, visit vitalitycapsules.com, and of course, think happens.